Today on ProChurch Daily, we're talking about Gen Z, student and youth ministry, and 3 social platforms your church needs to consider.
Well, hey there, and welcome to ProChurch Daily, the show where in 10 minutes or less you'll get your daily dose of tips and tactics to help your church share the message of Jesus while we navigate the biggest communication shift we've seen in the last 500 years. I'm your host, Alex Mills. I'm joined as always by the boss man. It's Brady Shearer, and today we're talking about student and youth ministries, 3 social platforms your church needs to consider.
You know, every day on ProChurch Daily, we try to share tips and tactics when it comes to church communications and digital. And a lot of the time, these types of tips and tactics are universally applicable to any age group and any platform. But we wanted to dedicate this episode of ProChurch Daily to a group that we don't too frequently discuss, and that is student and youth ministry. I actually went to school and studied to be a student pastor. I've got my degree in theology and youth ministry, and so I definitely remember and understand this world. And we want to talk about 3 social platforms that your church needs to consider when it comes specifically to Gen Z. Gen Z being anyone that's 22 and younger. Okay. These are the kids in high school, young adults in your student and youth ministry. And at the end of the day, there are rules that apply to everything we do in church. One of those principles that never changes depending on age is that attention is the most valuable commodity your church can possess. It's most important for a 75-year-old that is scrolling through their Facebook feed at a molasses pace, and it's important for a 17-year-old that has the attention span of nothing and checks Snapchat, as we'll see, many times every single day. You cannot communicate anything. You cannot get anyone to take action. You cannot get anyone to do anything if you don't first have their attention. And it doesn't matter if you're communicating the greatest story ever told, reconciliation through Jesus of all humankind, or if you're selling the slap chop. If you don't have attention, the slap chop will win. Because they are great at getting attention. And so we need to understand that that is the principle for any age group. And then secondly, everything that we're doing when it comes to taking the message of Jesus and sharing it with the world is we're taking a timeless message and we're sharing it through timely mediums. And as things change, we don't like change, we're unfamiliar to the change, and we thus ascribe evilness to the change. No one is suggesting in any of these tips or tactics that we change the message of Jesus. We're not suggesting that. What we are suggesting is that we communicate it through a medium that is timely to the generation and audience that you are trying to reach.
So good.
Perfect. Let us now talk about the 3 social platforms your church needs to consider in ascending order from most important to least important. Shocker. The first one on this list, YouTube, which is a shocker. I think Adweek came out and reported that 95% of Gen Z, that's those 22 or younger, uses YouTube. 95%.
Wow.
Here's what it's even more crazy. 50% said they cannot live without it.
Life could not go on with it. I would spontaneously die if I could not have YouTube.
I think the closest follow-up platform was Snapchat at 20%.
Oh, wow.
So YouTube crushed it. Every single young person wants to be a YouTuber right now. It is the number 1 occupation of choice when it comes to young people. They all want to be YouTubers. They all look up to us. We are YouTubers.
Man, there's a kid at my church who's like 6, and he does toy reviews. And I've never seen him talk so much as he does in his YouTube videos. He's usually a pretty quiet kid. You get a camera in front of his face and a toy, he'll do like an unboxing and like review this toy. It's the cutest thing you've ever seen. But he knows that it's funny. At 6 years old, he knows that there's attention there and he knows that there's opportunity there. The kid's a YouTuber.
My 3-year-old watches YouTube way more than she watches Netflix or TV, and she watches the silliest stuff like Barbies that are like real. Like instead of watching Peppa Pig, for instance, she'll watch like people play with Peppa Pig toys and talk out like George says to Peppa, like, "Wait, why don't we just watch Peppa? No, this is better."
What even is this world?
and we as millennials are like, "Yo, this is weird." And this is how every generation feels. Things change, and we have to adapt. The great thing is it's always timeless message, timely medium. So YouTube is the first platform you want to be on. You can do so much with YouTube. The key with all of these tips and tactics when it comes to Gen Z is that you can leverage them as the content creators. You, as the 35-year-old youth pastor, for instance, does not need to figure out YouTube if you don't want. They all know. If you buy them a camera, spend $1,000 on a camera, they will love you forever.
Give it to a 6-year-old and you're rolling.
And they will help you create the content. And as long as you can lead them, they can be the ones that are actually doing the work. That's what's great about youth and student ministry. It's like you're not an adult yet that's busy and cynical to serving in a church. I was serving in my youth group like 80 hours a week, it felt like.
Yeah.
Like, I would leave school on Friday at 3, not leave the church until midnight every single Friday. I did my internship there. I was there as often as I could. I had a community of friends there. I loved it.
Yeah.
And we did so much free work. We didn't even think about it that because it was so fun.
Yeah, and we've mentioned this before. YouTube is the world's second largest search engine. And so kids in your youth group are looking for answers to life's existential questions on YouTube. They don't want to read about things. They want to type it into YouTube and they want to hear somebody else talk about it. So why not meet them where they're at?
Great point. Second platform your church needs to consider if you're doing student and youth ministry with Gen Z is Snapchat. It's dead, right?
Yes.
Well, not for those under 22. SGC found that at least half of Gen Z. The stats with Gen Z are so stupid.
It's crazy.
They're crazy. At least half of Gen Z open Snapchat at least 11 times a day. So we often use the Facebook stat of 7 out of every 10 American adults are active on Facebook. Well, more than 5 out of 10 of every Gen Z participants open Snapchat at least 11 times a day.
Fully addicted.
11 times a day. Yeah. 71% said they turn to Snap 6 or more times a day. 78% use Snapchat daily.
Wow.
A lot of times we demonize Snapchat because messages disappear, as they now do on Facebook stories and Instagram stories and other platforms. Mm-hmm. And we feel like we as youth ministers and student ministers and churches cannot use it because there are certain liabilities that we need to consider.
Right.
And I don't want to dismiss those liabilities, but there are certain nations in the world that are dangerous to go to. And we still go to them as missionaries because they need to hear the gospel of Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's not a perfect analogy to this, but I have never seen attention being paid to a platform like the way Gen Z does with Snapchat.
There's 8 out of every 10 of your youth group kids are there.
And 5 out of 10 are there 11 times a day or more. Yeah. And for you to say, well, it's not worth the risk, I think is one of the biggest travesties that you can commit. Yeah. And sure, there are things to consider.
Yeah.
But for you to just say, I know that's where every kid is, but rather than shine a light there and be present there because something could happen, I'm going to let them fend for themselves and just not engage. That cannot be the choice for most of us. There are certain churches that we need to follow that for whatever reason. I'm not going to say 100%, but for most of us, it's not worth it. We've got to be where they are. We can't just let them fend for themselves because something might happen. You don't just not use the internet because the second biggest activity is pornography. Yeah. You still use it. Yeah. You just try to avoid the pornography.
Right.
Similarly, we can't just give up on Snapchat because messages disappear and one time a youth leader did something they shouldn't. As we've learned this year, youth leaders do something they shouldn't regardless.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that we should be foolish, but the strengths and the importance of using it outweighs the risks.
Yeah, and that's one of the big hangups with Snapchat is, as far as advertising go, there is some more questionable content on Snapchat than there is on other platforms, and that's why that's one of the reasons that a lot of churches and youth ministries stay away from it. But I love what you said. Like, if there's a whole bunch of dark stuff going on in there, like, all the more reason to get our light in there and shine it, because we know that light overcomes darkness, and the kids are there, and there should be some good news amongst all the junk that's on there. So all the more reason for us to be there.
Final platform to consider is Instagram. Same report that did the Snapchat report, SGC, found that 76% of Gen Z uses Instagram daily. We love Instagram. Mm-hmm. It trends a little bit older than Snapchat, as well as YouTube, but it is still huge. I see my cousins who are Gen Z, they're on Snap. They tell me they like it better than Instagram, but they use Instagram still a ton, and they use YouTube like crazy. Similar to those other platforms, it's huge. And again, to reiterate, don't feel overwhelmed like you have to become an expert with YouTube, Snapchat, and Instagram. Right. You need to learn it, do as much as you can, but you have other responsibilities. You can use the kids in your youth to generate content for this. They are even more digital natives and digital content creators than we are as 25 to 30-year-olds. They know it even more because when they were 3, they were doing it, whereas we had to wait till we were 10 or 11. So participate with them, partner with them, lead them, and you can leverage these platforms to reach a huge generation that is going to be similar to millennials, but are going to be unique. Reach them with the hope of Jesus.
That's great.
That'll do it for today's episode of ProChurch Daily, and we will see you tomorrow. Hey, thanks for watching today's episode of ProChurch Daily. Make sure to subscribe to this channel so you never miss another video.
And if you like this episode, why don't you go ahead and hit that like button.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. That's it.